Welcome to the channel Zilalowa of Dr. Yaluka. To begin, please subscribe and tick the notification bell in order not to miss our videos. Thank you for joining.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining us. We resolved to have a lecture on African spirituality every first Sunday of the month. And this is the first Sunday of March, and we are organizing this lecture. The next one will be the first Sunday of April. So we thank you for joining these events. The title of this lecture is Hope in Adversity. I'm Dr. Chatezwa Lubanzadio Luyaluka. I hold a PhD honor in theology from Trinity Graduate School of Apologetics and Theology from Kerala in India. I'm an apologist, and as such, my interest is in the study of African spirituality and epistemology, the defense of African spirituality and epistemology. So I founded Nzilalowa, which is a modern academy of African traditional spirituality. Nzilalowa comprises two branches. The first is an academic branch and is called Institut des Sciences Animiques. Within the frame of this branch, I conduct academic research on African spirituality and epistemology, and I published about 35 scientific papers and 15 books that are available at Amazon.com. Nzilalowa comprises also a second branch, which is an initiatory branch. This branch is called also Nzilalowa. So within Nzilalowa, you have the Institut des Sciences Animiques and you have Nzilalowa. In the frame of the second branch, we initiate African people to the practice of the divine mystery, the practice of African traditional religion, the divine practice. I insist on the divine practice because there are two kinds of practices of African traditional religion. The popular, the widely known, is the human practice. The less known is the divine practice. The divine practice helps the initiate to become back the child of God he has been in heaven. And it is based essentially on the purification of thoughts. The ancestors who act in the divine practice are called the ancestors of water. In Congo, the Congo religion, they are called Bakulba Maza. In the human practice, the power originally developed in the divine and transmitted through faith is used for good or evil purpose in order to organize society, elevate and protect society. And within the frame of the human practice, the ancestors who act are called the ancestors of nature, of forest. In Bukongo, we say Bakulu Banseke. So those are two different kinds of practices of African traditional religion to be not messed up. It is very important to distinguish the two. The divine practice is seen, for example, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It is seen also in Bukongo. It was the preserve of the Kimpasi, which was the sacerdotal initiatory academy of the Congo people. So we initiate people to the practice, the divine practice of African traditional religion. And this religion, we show it to be the continuity of the religion of ancient Egypt. Thus we are Kemites or Kemites. But our Kemitism is different from that of the other people. So we call ourselves Neo-kemites. What is the difference between both? The Kemite movement started in the United States of America during the year 1970s. I mean, has a spiritual movement. It relies on eclecticism, which means they borrow here and there and in order to recreate, reconstruct the religion of ancient Egypt. So they rely on induction and speculation in order to understand the texts of ancient Egypt and try to reconstruct the religion of the Kemet, of the ancient Egyptian. Generally, it is an anti-Bible movement. And generally, they reject also all about Jesus. That is the Kemetic movement. Now, the Neo-kemitism, which is our movement, started in 2008 with the discovery of the Kemetic cosmological argument. The Kemetic cosmological argument is a deduction from true premises. So it is an exact science. And we use these science in order to make a comparative study. And it reveals that it is the scientific statement of the religion of ancient Egypt, of Sumer, and of Bukongo that led us to the conclusion that the Bukongo is a continuity of the religion of ancient Egypt and Sumer. Sumer belonged culturally to Africa. Because we use comparative study, we don't reject the principles that are in the Bible. By using comparative study, we can prove that this is scientific and this is wrong. So we can take which belongs to us and reject what doesn't belong to our culture. Remember Simon Kimbangu, one of the greatest of the Congo prophets, said that study the principles that are in the Bible because the thief must be taken with the object he has stolen. He means that the scientific principles found in the Bible were stolen from our ancestors. They belong to us. That's why we don't reject the Bible as the other Kemites do. So we are Neo-Kemite, and this is a different movement from the other Kemite movement. As I said, the theme of this lecture is hope in adversity. There is always a hope when you found yourself in an adverse situation. This hope is permitted because African traditional religion proves that evil is a lie. Evil is not real. I know that many of you will be upset to learn that evil is unreal. But this is a probable fact, a demonstrable fact. We can prove this thanks to the cosmological argument. But let me start from the beginning. What is a cosmological argument? A cosmological argument is an argument, a deductive argument used in order to demonstrate the existence of the creator of this temporal universe. That is how it is used in Western theology and philosophy. However, since the time of Plato in the year minus 600 up to now, Western scholars are unable to prove the existence of the Most High. They happen to prove the existence of a creator, but they cannot prove that that creator is the Most High being. And the reason of this failure is very simple. They confuse the creator and the Most High God. In African traditional religion, those are two different beings. Now, if the Most High is the creator, if the Most High were the creator, the question will be, where is creation in relation to the Most High? Creation cannot be in the Most High, otherwise, at the moment of creation, something in God will go from nothingness to existence, and God will change. And that will mean that there must be a principle of the mutability of God, and that principle must be greater than God, which means greater than the greatest possible being, which is impossible. And if creation were outside of God, outside of the Most High, then added to God, it will result in an entity greater than God. So in both ways, it doesn't work. The theologians know this. Many philosophers know this. They cannot tell you because they don't have something to exchange. So the cosmological argument is the demonstration of the existence of the creator by starting from the existence of the cosmos. But what we have discovered in 2008, and that we call the kemetic cosmological argument, it is an argument that extends to all the essential doctrines of solar religion, a salvational religion where the human being is in reality a child of God. So it extends into a natural systematic theology. Therefore, we say it is an exact science. And this kemetic cosmological argument proves the superior nature of African traditional religion. All the religions of the world are mere beliefs, but African traditional religion in its original trend, which trend has been continued in Bukongo and in some Bantu ethnics, is an exact science. This can be proven thanks to the kemetic cosmological argument. So for the sake of this lecture, I can summarily introduce the kemetic cosmological argument this way. Remember, our aim here is to prove that evil is an illusion, a lie. Now, you and I are individual beings, and because we are individual beings, this universe in which we live has an individuality because it is an aggregate of individual entities. Because as it is an individual entity, this temporal universe is the work of an individual creator, an individual cause. Now, the individual nature of this cause begs the existence of other similar causes. They may not yet have created their universe, that is not important, but they exist. So we have potential creators and effective creators. Now here I introduce an hypothesis, which hypothesis I will prove later. The hypothesis is that each creation exists in its creator. Now, on the ground of this hypothesis, let us consider an entity that includes all the potential and effective causes, all the potential and effective creators. That entity must be or is the greatest possible being. Because any universe you can imagine will exist in its creator by hypothesis, and that creator will exist in this entity. So this entity is the greatest possible being. Therefore, this entity is the Most High God, the greatest possible being. Thus it ensures three main attributes of the Most High God. The first attribute is that God is indivisible. And the second is that God is immutable. If God were both mutable and divisible, then there might be a principle of his divisibility and mutability, and that principle must be greater than God, according to the law of causality, which requires of an effect a cause and adequate and anterior. So that principle of the divisibility and mutability of God must be greater than God, which is impossible because we have demonstrated that God is the greatest possible being. The third attribute is that God is transcendent. We know that God is above everything, but by the transcendence of God, the Africans, the black people, means that God doesn't know evil. It may astound you. Yes, God doesn't know evil. Did God know evil? Due to his indivisibility, in him to know and to be are the same thing. What God knows is what he is. If God knew evil, if God knows evil, then God must be infinitely good and infinitely bad, which is impossible. Which is impossible. So God is transcendent, which means he is above everything and he doesn't know evil. That is why the true African people don't address their prayers directly to the Most High God. No, they address their prayers directly to the Creator and to lower divinities, including the illuminated ancestors. Now, the question is this one. Where is our temporal universe in relation to God the Most High? Remember, we have proven the existence of potential creators, effective creators, the existence of the Most High God, and we have proven that the Most High God is indivisible, immutable, and transcendent. Let me add something here. As the greatest possible being, God is also the greatest possible reality. Because if there were a reality outside of God, that reality added to God will result in an entity greater than God, which is impossible because God is the greatest possible being. So God is the only reality. In other words, good is the only reality. Evil is not real. We have shown you that if evil were real, it will be part of God, and if it were part of God, due to the indivisibility of God, he will be infinitely good and infinitely bad, which is impossible. So evil has only the reality that you and I give to it in our ignorance, in our fear, in our doubts. So, about the temporal universe, where these temporal universe exist in relation to the Most High? It cannot be in the Most High due to his immutability. If it were, at the moment of creation, something in God will go from nothingness to existence, and God will change. And God is absolutely immutable, so creation cannot be in the Most High God. Creation cannot be also outside of the Most High God, because if it were added to God, it will result in an entity greater than God, which is also impossible. You wonder, where is the solution then? Look, it's very simple. Let's suppose we are in a hall, and the speaker announced, Mr. X, who is in this hall, has a car. His car is neither outside of the hall, neither inside the hall. The answer is that his car is in his mind, in his consciousness. So the Creator is in the Most High God. And the Creator has a creation, but his creation is neither in God nor outside of God. Therefore, it is in his consciousness. Creation occurs in the temporal consciousness of the Creator. And that is the proof of our hypothesis. And it means that reality is invisible. The visible is just an appearance. The visible is just a limited perception of the spiritual reality, the invisible. If it seems strange to you, know that it wasn't strange for our ancestors. The Bantu people spoke to Placid Temples, the one who wrote the book titled Bantu Philosophy. And they told him, you know, the man you see is not the real man. The real man is the invisible one, and that's one we call Mutu. The visible personality is just an appearance. Reality is invisible. You have the same conviction among the Yoruba of Nigeria. They speak about the visible human being as being just an appearance, and reality being invisible. And if you go to Cameroon, you will find the Bassa people. They call the human being Muts. But then they insist, they say, the one they call Muts is the invisible human being, the spiritual human being. The visible appearance they call mutbinam, which means the one who has 2 legs and 2 arms. An appearance. We have proven to you scientifically through a deductive process that God is the greatest possible being, that God is the only reality, and that there cannot be a reality outside of God. Therefore, evil is an illusion. Whatever be its duration and nature, evil is always a suggestion coming to you for acceptance. Don't be astounded by this. When you wake up every morning, you see the sun go from east to west. But science, which is geography, tells you that no, it is the earth that drifts from west to east. So it is the same. Your corporeal senses tells you that evil is real. Your disease is real. Your troubles are real. The pleasure in sin is real. But science is insisting on the fact that God is the only reality. The real is the good. Evil is unreal. And that is a hope offered by you and me. A hope offered by African traditional spirituality in order for you and me to vanquish evil through prayer, through scientific, spiritual, mental means. At this point, let me give you a little story. An old farmer had an old donkey, an ass. The ass was so old that one day it fell in a well. Now the well was very deep and it wasn't anymore producing water. So the old farmer reasoned this way. He said, the well is useless. The ass, also the donkey being too old, is also useless. So why should I give myself the pains of trying to get the ass out of this deep well? He said, I'm going just to dump the well and do away with the well and the ass. So he called the neighboring farmers. They brought the garbage and they began to fill the well with their garbage. As the donkey received the first bench of the garbage on his back, he understood the situation. He shouted with all his might, but to no avail. The farmers kept on pouring buckets of waste on him. After shouting, the donkey stood quiet. By remaining quiet, he heard a voice. It heard the voice telling it, shake yourself, shake yourself, shake yourself strongly. And he shook himself, and he realized that by shaking his body, all the garbage falls down, and he can rise above the garbage. So every time they were pouring, he will shake himself, it will fall down and he will rise above. So after a while, the farmer said, "Oh, we think he is already under the garbage because he's not anymore shouting. Let's see what is the situation up to now." They looked into the well and they realized that the donkey was almost outside. Remember, in any difficult situation, remember this donkey. Remember that you have first to quench your fear. You have to be calm and listen the voice of God. God is transcendent, but He speaks through our dear ancestors. In difficult situation, you have to shake evil. And after shaking evil, you have to rise above evil. Those are great lessons that were taught by this donkey. Let me analyze this point by point. The first thing is fear. Fear is not a throbbing heart. No. Some people have done courageous feats with a heart throbbing. We know that during the March of Montgomery, Dr. Martin Luther King had fear, great fear. He took a cup of coffee. He prayed that allayed his fear and went out to lead people to their freedom. Fear is actually the belief that evil has power. Fear can be also defined as the belief that you are separated from God, that you are separated from holy ancestors. You are never alone. There are always ancestors caring about you, surrounding you. A story is recounted. Someone, after dying, went to the ancestors and he said, "You promised that you will always be with me. But when I see myself on earth, I see only mine. I don't see yourselves around me." And they said to him, "Those are the moments that we were carrying you on our hearts." The ancestors are already around you, caring for you. So you don't have to be afraid. All power belongs in reality in God. And remember, God is the only reality. God is omnipotent. He is all power. So evil has only the power that you and I give to it through our ignorance. You can cast fear by knowing the omnipotence of God, by being conscious of the surrounding presence of God through the agency of holy ancestors. And remember, the other point is to be calm. Be quiet. God can be heard only when you are quiet. In fact, the ancestor always speaks to you and me. But we have to be quiet in order to listen. we have to be quiet in order to hear them. You can listen and not hear because while you are listening, you are afraid and you are not quiet. I remember once I had an exam of geometry, and there were 3 questions for 3 hours. It remained only 15 minutes when I realized that I was stuck on the 3rd question. I resolved to pray in order to find a solution. I prayed using the Bible because I'm not an anti-Bible. I know that the principles that are in the Bible were stolen from my ancestors. So I used Psalm 147 verse 5 and Job chapter 32 verse 8. Those 2 verses shows that God is infinite intelligence, and there is nothing too hard for him. I had my Bible during the exam, so I opened the Bible and read those 2 and meditated on those 2 sentences. After finishing to meditate, the thought came clearly to me that the 2 straight line ahead were parallel, but I could not tell with my eye that they were parallel because they were this way. It is like when they drew the rail of a train. They seem to be joining, but they are parallel. So it was such a situation. And I took this as an hypothesis. I say A is parallel to B, and I draw the consequences. And as I drawn the last line, the teacher took my copy and he went, after making the correction, he gave me 18.5 under 20. And he said he gave me 18.5 under 20 because I didn't tell him why they were parallel. Later, I understood that they were parallel because the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate were the same. So it's only the z-coordinate coordinates that were different, which means parallelism. I didn't know that on the spot, but God told me. The ancestor whispered this answer to me because I was calm, because I was praying. To be calm and listen enables you to hear. People want sometimes to hear in a dramatic way, like I speak to you. Interruption. We can hear the voice of God in a dream, like a dream. It can be heard also like an intuition. What many people call intuition is someone, an ancestor speaking to you. But you call it intuition. The more you obey to your intuition, the clearer they will become. So always listen to your intuition. The next lesson is that you have to shake evil. To shake evil is to establish its nothingness, to know that God is the only reality, to know that whatever be its nature, it is an illusion, it is not real. To realize that God is the only reality going on. Good is the only reality, evil is unreal. Evil is false. By doing this, by establishing, by affirming God, that God is the only reality. You are shaking evil and you are rising above it. And this is a powerful schema that leads to healing. I remember once a lady came to me whose baby was having a case of blood that was diminishing. They went to the hospital the first time, they make a transfusion, they came back at home and the blood diminished again. They went the second time, they made again a transfiguration, they made again a transfusion, and for the third time the blood diminished again. The baby became pale. On that point, they didn't have any more money in order to go to the hospital. So they decided to rely on spiritual means. They came to me and I told them, you know, the blood is spiritual because money is spiritual. Money is not material. And God is the life of your baby. Life doesn't depend on blood, but the reverse is true. The blood depends on life because life is God. I established the fact that God being perfect, He made that baby in His image and likeness. Therefore, that baby is perfect on, right on, right on that moment. I denied every suggestion of fear, every suggestion of doubt by sticking to the fact that God is the only reality. What happened is that the color of the baby became normal, the, the fever stopped, he was playing, he was completely healed. I've seen many cases of healing be resolved through spiritual means by starting from the fact that God is perfect and He made us in His image and likeness. Therefore, we are as perfect as God is. And remember, we have proven this scientifically through the kemetic cosmological argument. God is the only reality. So whatever be its nature or duration, the evil you seem to face is an illusion. There is always a hope for you in adversity. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share. More on this subject can be found on my books available at Amazon.